Rain hammered against my windshield so hard I could barely see the road. The wipers couldn't keep up. Headlights from passing trucks blinded me. Every mile was a fight to keep my eyes open. The dashboard clock read 11:47 p.m. I should have been in town hours ago. But after an accident on the highway, traffic was diverted onto an old road I didn't even know existed. The landscape was empty. No gas stations, no houses. Only endless darkness and the hiss of rain. Just as I thought about pulling over and sleeping on the shoulder, I saw a faint light. A sign. Neon letters flickered, most of them long dead. Motel, Highway 13. I turned off. My throat was dry. The building looked old, almost abandoned. Only one car sat in the lot, a dark sedan parked dead center, as if it had been waiting for me. I stepped out. The rain drenched me instantly. The air felt different here, heavy, like time itself was moving slower. The steps creaked under my weight as I reached the reception. Inside, a dim light burned. Behind the counter stood a man in a grey suit that might have been elegant 30 years ago. His hair was slicked back, but greasy to the eye. He smiled, but it wasn't natural. It looked rehearsed. "Long night, isn't it?" he said. His voice was too deep, almost a rasp. I nodded. He cleared his throat and laid a thick guest book on the counter. "You may choose any room," he continued slowly, "except number 6. For a moment I thought I misheard. "Excuse me?" I asked. The man didn't move. "Room 6 is occupied. Always. Choose another." His eyes were dark, almost black. He didn't look away, as if testing me, waiting to see if I would accept the rule. A shiver ran through me, not from the cold, from the feeling I had crossed a threshold into a place where other laws applied. Slowly, I picked up the pen. I signed the guest book. On the last pages there was only one name, written again and again, the same handwriting. Room 6, John Miller. Over and over, dozens of times. When I looked up, the receptionist was no longer smiling. He just stood there, motionless, and the silence in the room was so deep I could hear my own breath. "You can choose any room," the receptionist repeated, placing a heavy keyring on the counter. The brass tags glimmered under the tired light above, scratched and worn with age. I scanned them. My eyes stopped at number 4. I don't know why. Maybe chance, maybe instinct. "I'll take this one," I said. For a second, I thought I saw relief flicker across his lips. "4 is fine," he replied. He unclipped the key and slid it toward me. I reached for it, but his hand rose, stopping me mid-motion. "Remember," he said quietly. His voice lost its practiced politeness and turned sharp, almost commanding. "Never enter room 6. That room is occupied, always." His eyes didn't settle on me. They drifted toward a set of doors down the hall. One of them, darker than the rest, carried the number 6. Before I could ask, he continued. "And another thing, when you go to bed, do not close the curtains all the way. Leave them slightly open. If you shut them completely, you'll see things you shouldn't see." My throat tightened. He didn't sound like he was telling me a superstition. He sounded like he was laying down a law. He leaned closer, his breath cold on my cheek. "And if anyone knocks on your door after midnight, don't open. Don't answer. Whatever you hear, ignore it. It will sound urgent. It may even sound like voices you know, but it's not anyone you should let inside." I froze with the key still in my hand. My heart thumped in my chest. I wanted to ask him why. Why these strange warnings? But when I opened my mouth, his expression hardened. "No questions," he cut me off. "Just remember, room 4, don't shut the curtains, and never, ever open the door after midnight." I swallowed hard, picked up my bag, and turned toward the hallway. Before stepping away, I glanced back one last time. The receptionist was still standing there. His face was stone, his eyes fixed, not on me, but on those dark doors marked with a 6. As if he were waiting for someone else. The hallway was narrow, lit by flickering fluorescent lights that buzzed like insects on a summer night. The carpet was damp, soaked with moisture, and every step produced a muffled squish. Everything inside me screamed that I should leave, that I didn't belong here, but exhaustion and the relentless rain pushed me forward. I stopped at the door marked 4. The metal plate was scratched, as if someone had tried to scrape it off. The key in my hand felt heavy and cold. When I slid it into the lock, the teeth of the metal groaned. For a moment, I thought the lock would refuse to turn. Then something clicked, and the door creaked open. The room greeted me with the smell of old wood and a faint trace of cleaning chemicals. The kind meant to cover up something unpleasant, not remove it. A bed with crooked legs, a nightstand, a small lamp, and a window hidden behind thick, dark curtains. They were drawn so tightly the room felt sealed, like a box with no air inside. The receptionist's voice still echoed in my head. "Leave them slightly open. If you close them completely, you'll see things you're not meant to see." I stood at the door, staring at those curtains. It was absurd, the idea that a simple piece of fabric could scare me. And yet, I slowly reached out and pulled them aside with my fingers. Outside, the rain poured. The lights of the parking lot blurred and shimmered. The sedan I'd seen earlier was still there, but I could have sworn it was parked a few meters differently than before. "Maybe it's just fatigue," I muttered, but the words didn't help. I sat down on the bed. The mattress groaned beneath me, like someone had just gotten up. A shiver ran down my spine. I sighed and pulled out my phone. No signal. Just the dim glow of the screen, showing my own reflection, my face tired and tense. I leaned back against the wall and closed my eyes. And then his voice returned, sharper, closer, as if whispered right into my ear. "Don't close the curtains. Never close them all the way." My eyes flew open. The room was silent, but the air felt thicker, harder to breathe. The window, was it different? I could have sworn the curtains were tighter than I'd left them. I stood and walked toward them. My fingers brushed the fabric, wet, as if the rain outside had seeped through. I pulled them open a little more. A light flickered outside, or maybe just a reflection. It was hard to tell. The sedan was still there, but this time I had the chilling sense that someone was sitting inside. I tore my gaze away and let the curtains fall back together. That's when I heard it, a whisper right behind me. "You shouldn't have left them open." I spun around. The room was empty, just the bed, the nightstand, and those damned curtains. But the voice, deep, rasping, was too familiar. Exactly like the receptionist. "It's just a hallucination," I told myself. "Just exhaustion. I need sleep." But I couldn't move. My hand remained on the curtains, fingers clenched in the damp fabric. The feeling that someone was watching me from the other side was so strong, I almost pulled them shut completely, just so I wouldn't have to look out again. And then came the knocking. Not on the door, on the window. The knocking on the window was muffled but steady. 3 short taps, a pause, then again. My heart pounded so loud I was sure the whole room could hear it. "No," I whispered to myself. "It's just the wind. Just the rain." But the rain struck the glass in a constant rhythm. This was different, too precise, too human. I pressed my ear against the curtain, straining to catch any other sound. That's when I heard the whisper, "Let me in." I froze. It was a woman's voice, weak, pleading. "Help me, please, I'm so cold." Goosebumps rippled across my skin. I didn't know what to do. The receptionist had warned me clearly, "Don't close the curtains. Don't open for anyone." The knocking grew louder, sharper, more desperate. "Please, let me in. Please, is someone there? I know you're there." The voice broke, sobbing. My heart begged me to open, to be human. But something deep inside screamed that if I did, it would end badly. I couldn't resist. I yanked the curtain all the way open to see for myself, and instantly regretted it. A woman stood outside, drenched from the storm. Her hair clung in strands across her face, but her eyes, she had no eyes. Only two hollow sockets pouring water. Not blood, not tears, just endless clear water dripping down the glass. When she opened her mouth to speak again, no words came. Only a roar, like standing beneath a waterfall. The entire window shuddered. The room trembled with it. Terrified, I let the curtain fall back, but it was too late. I had seen. I had broken the rule. The curtains slipped from my hands and snapped shut on their own, as if pulled from outside. And in the blackness, in the absolute darkness of the room, I heard the receptionist's voice, clear, cold, merciless. "I told you to leave them slightly open." I fumbled for the lamp, flicked it on. The bulb flickered weakly, barely pushing back the shadows, as if the darkness itself resisted the light. The bed, the nightstand, my suitcase, all still there, but the window looked different. The glass was cracked, wet, and shadows moved just beyond it. That's when I realized I couldn't hear the rain anymore. No rain, no cars, no sound at all, as if the motel no longer existed in our world. And in that silence came another knock. Not on the window, on the door. The knocking on the door was quiet but piercing. 3 short strikes, a pause, then again. The exact same rhythm I'd heard at the window moments before. I stood frozen in the middle of the room, fingers clenched into the blanket on the bed. The receptionist's voice echoed in my head, clearer than ever. "If someone knocks on your door after midnight, don't open. Don't answer. Whatever you hear, ignore it." My eyes slid to my watch. The hands pointed to 12:07 a.m. The knocking came again, harder this time. Bang, bang, bang. "It's a hallucination," I whispered to myself. "I must just be too tired." But the sound returned, faster, more urgent. And then, a voice. "Hey, open up, it's me." I froze. That voice, I knew it. It was Tom, my old friend from university. "What?" I breathed, disbelief heavy in my throat. "I heard you were here," the voice came again. "Open the door, please. I'm soaked out here." I stepped closer, close enough to almost touch the door. The rain was still absent outside, but the voice was crystal clear. "Tom?" I called. "Yes, it's me. Come on, let me in." Every nerve in my body screamed to turn away, to ignore what I was hearing, but my mind betrayed me. The voice was too exact, too familiar. If it was a hallucination, how could it mimic his tone, his rhythm, so perfectly? How did you find me?" I asked, stalling for time. Silence, too long. Then the voice shifted. "Because I always know where you are." The words knocked the breath from my chest. I stumbled back a step. The knocking started again, fast, relentless. Bang, 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 bang. "Let me in. Do you let me in? Do you hear me?" The voice roared, but this time it wasn't Tom. It was a woman, the same one from the window. And then there were more. Dozens of voices at once, male and female, young and old, all crying, whispering, pleading and threatening. "Let me in. Open up. Don't leave me out here. You're mine. You're one of us. You won't be alone forever." I clamped my hands over my ears, but it didn't help. The voices weren't coming from outside. They were inside my head. "Stop it!" I shouted. "It's not real." And suddenly, silence. Absolute silence. No knocking, no whispers, only my ragged breathing. Cautiously, I opened my eyes. The door stood firm, the key still gleaming in the lock. But then I saw something that hadn't been there before. On the wood, at eye level, wet handprints began to appear, one after another, dozens of them, pressing against the door from outside. Water streaked down the surface, soaking into the floor until it felt like the whole room was drowning in dampness. And among those dripping marks, a message formed. Room 6. The handprints on the door blurred, as if pressed from outside by flowing water. Thin streams ran down the wood until the carpet at the threshold grew damp. I stumbled back, tripped over the bed. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst from my chest. "No, no, no," I whispered, trying to convince myself it was only a hallucination. but the marks kept spreading, dozens, maybe hundreds. The words, Room 6, carved themselves again and again in dripping water across the wood. The receptionist's voice filled my ears once more, this time sharper, closer, as if he stood right beside me. Don't answer. Don't open. No matter how real it sounds, it isn't. But, I said aloud, even though I was alone in the room. I heard his voice. I knew it. That was Tom. And as if in reply, from the other side of the door came, "Of course it's me." My knees buckled. No, impossible. No one could know I was here. "Come on," the voice continued. Calm, gentle, almost kind. "Remember how we always joked about getting lost on the road and laughing it off? Well, I got lost too. Let me in, before it's too late." I stood frozen by the door, my hand hovering over the lock. One turn, one small click, and the voice would be inside. But something deep within me screamed, if I opened that door, it would not be Tom who entered. How did you find me?" I asked. Silence, then 3 slow, measured knocks. "You know I always know where you are," the same words as before, but colder this time. I stepped back. My hands trembled as I reached for my suitcase, as if searching for something to defend myself with. A book? A shirt? Nothing would help. The door rattled, not violently, but like someone testing the handle. The handprints shifted, some stretching into unnaturally long fingers, others twisting, as if trying to crawl through the cracks. "Open," the voice commanded. It wasn't Tom anymore. It wasn't a woman. It wasn't a man. It was everything at once. Dozens of voices fused together. "Open. You belong to us." Whispers rose through the room, from every corner, from under the bed, from the ceiling. "You belong to us. You belong to us. You belong to us." I clamped my hands over my ears, but it didn't matter. The sound vibrated inside my skull. I rushed to the window, ready to tear the curtains aside, even knowing it would break another rule. But when I touched them, they were soaked, heavy, as if the storm itself had seeped into the fabric. Then, silence. The knocking stopped. The whispers died. Absolute quiet. I pressed my back to the wall, staring at the door. That's when I noticed something new. The moisture on the wood wasn't just from the handprints. At the base of the door, water began to seep through. First a thin trickle, then more, until a dark stain spread across the carpet. Cold flooded my shoes when I stepped in it without thinking. But worse, it wasn't clear. It was black, thick, like oil. And in that water I saw a reflection, my own face. But the eyes were empty sockets, dripping with the same black liquid. I stumbled back with a cry, tripped on the bed, and fell hard to the floor. When I looked again, the water was gone. The carpet was dry. But the door remained. And this time, carved clearly into the wood, was a new message. "You're next." The door grew still. The words, "You're next," faded into the darkness, as if sinking back into the wood. I tried to steady my breathing, but every inhale burned my throat. And then I noticed it. There was a mirror in the room. Small, oval, hanging above the sink in the corner. I had no idea how I hadn't seen it before, as if it hadn't been there a moment ago. I stepped closer, my hand trembling. The receptionist's warning returned to me, clearer than ever. Never look into the mirror after 3 a.m. I checked my watch, 2:51. I still have time, I whispered to myself. The mirror was dusty, coated with a thin layer of grime. When I stared into it, I saw only a faint version of myself. Shadowed eyes, a tight mouth. Everything inside me screamed to cover it with a towel, to take it down. But the longer I looked, the stronger the pull became. Behind me, the bed frame creaked. "Who's there?" I shouted, spinning around. The room was empty. Then I heard it. A voice. Not from outside, from the mirror. "You're tired, aren't you?" I flinched. My mouth hung open, but no sound came. "Look," the voice continued, deeper than my own. "You want the truth, don't you?" "No," I whispered. This isn't real. Of course it is. In the mirror, my lips moved, but I hadn't spoken. They formed other words, another expression. The eyes in the reflection were wider, more awake. "Let me through the glass," it said. "I'm the real one. You're only the shadow." I stumbled back. "Stop. Stop it." The reflection smirked. "Remember the knocking? Remember the water? That was me. I was only trying to find my way back." My head spun. I gripped the table for balance. "No, I'm the real one." "Really?" the reflection replied. Its hand lifted, pressing a finger against the inside of the glass. I gasped as cold shot through my skin at the exact same spot. I screamed and jumped back. Then laughter filled the room. My laughter, but not mine. "In 3 minutes," the reflection said. "You won't have a choice." I glanced at my watch. 2:59. The seconds ticked away. "No, no, no," I cried, snatching a towel from the shelf and throwing it over the mirror. But it didn't cover. The fabric passed straight through, leaving the glass exposed. "You can't remove me," the reflection whispered. "You belong here, in room 6. Seconds melted into minutes. My watch shifted. 3 o'clock, and the mirror laughed. The clock on my wrist ticked over to 3 a.m. In that exact second, the bulb in the lamp burst. The room fell into absolute darkness. The mirror glowed on its own. Not bright but cold. A pale, moon-like light seeped into every crack of the room. My reflection was no longer mine. Its eyes were wide open, the pupils stretched impossibly large. The smile twisting its lips did not belong to me. "You see," the reflection said. Its voice was clear now, not muffled, not distant. It rang out as if it was standing right in front of me. "I am the one who belongs here. You are the mistake. Shadows cannot live without the original." "You're not real," I croaked. "You're just a hallucination." The reflection tilted its head back and laughed. "Hallucination? You're the hallucination. I'm the one who stayed in room 6 when you ran. Don't you remember?" I froze. What was he talking about? I had never been here before, and yet, the way he said it, it sounded like the truth, like something I had forgotten. Then, in that instant, his hand pressed against the inside of the glass. The surface rippled like water. His fingers pushed through. I gasped as a stabbing cold shot into my chest where he touched me. This time it wasn't just cold. It was as if something was seeping into me. "Stop it!" I shouted, stumbling back. But the reflection moved with me. Not delayed, not mirrored, at the exact same time. He stood there in my stance, my pose. Only his eyes were hollow pits, streaming with black water. "We belong together," he hissed. "And when we merge, you'll finally know what the truth is." The knocking on the door returned, harder than ever. Bang, bang, bang. Water began to creep under the threshold again. The whole room shook. "Don't open it," I whispered to myself, fighting to stay conscious. The reflection laughed. "You already opened it, otherwise I wouldn't be here." My hands trembled. The air grew thick, pressing down on my chest. I couldn't breathe. The mirror pulsed with light, the glass bending like liquid. Inside I saw things that shouldn't exist. Room 6. A door. The same words carved across it. "You're next." The bed inside was empty. Then slowly a figure appeared. Someone sitting on the mattress, head buried in his hands. When he looked up, I saw my own face. "That's impossible," I whispered. "That's reality," the reflection answered. "You ran, I stayed, and now I'll bring you back." I felt a pull, dragging me forward. The glass was no longer solid. It moved like the surface of a lake. My legs shifted on their own. "No, no, I don't want this," I screamed, trying to wrench myself away. But his arms stretched out of the mirror, seizing my shoulders. The cold was unbearable, cutting straight through to the bone. Then another voice spoke. The receptionist. "Step away from the mirror." "What?" I spun. He stood in the corner, dressed exactly as before, his dark eyes unblinking. "I told you not to look, and you didn't listen." "Help me," I cried. He only shook his head. "Help yourself. I gave you the rules." The reflection pulled harder. The glass yawned wide open. Behind it was nothing but darkness, alive with whispers. Dozens of voices rose, chanting together. "You belong to us. You belong to us," I screamed, kicked at the table. The lamp toppled and shattered. At once the mirror's light went out. The glass hardened. The reflection vanished. The room was dark again. Only my ragged breathing remained. Only the drip, drip, drip of water from the cracked pipe filled the silence. On my watch, the numbers blinked. 3:07 a.m., and then the mirror laughed. I couldn't tear my eyes from the mirror. Even though the light had gone out, even though it looked like an ordinary piece of glass, I felt it watching me. Not my eyes, his. I shook my head, trying to drag myself back into reality. "It's just a motel," I whispered. "Just an old, cursed motel." But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. Then I noticed something new. The water that had once seeped beneath the door now stretched across the carpet in a dark trail leading into the hallway, as if something was pulling me outward. I tossed my suitcase onto the bed. I thought about leaving, walking into the storm, even if it meant stumbling through the night to the nearest town. But when I opened the door, the hallway had changed. It was longer now, twisting, endless, and it led only one way, toward the door marked 6. My heart pounded. "No," I said out loud, "not there." But my legs moved on their own, step after step, each one heavier, louder, as though I had lost control of my own body. I passed the reception desk. The clerk was gone. The counter stood empty, the guest book spread open. On the last page, that name again, John Miller, room 6. Written dozens, maybe hundreds of times. "Who is John Miller?" I whispered. From the walls of the hallway came a whisper in reply. "You are John Miller." My heart nearly stopped. I walked faster, desperate to outrun the voice, but the farther I went, the louder it grew. "You are John Miller. You always were." I stopped. I was standing in front of the door marked 6. It looked different from the rest. Darker wood, a heavy metal key still in the lock, as if waiting for me. Cold radiated from it, biting into my skin the moment I touched the handle. "You must not," said a voice behind me. I spun around. The receptionist stood in the shadows of the hallway. "I told you clearly," he said. "Room 6 is always occupied." Who's in there?" I hissed. He smiled, but the smile was hollow. "You." I stared at him. "What do you mean?" The clerk stepped closer. His feet made no sound. "Everyone who comes here finds their way to room 6. Some quickly, some slowly, but in the end, all of them. And you've been here for a very long time." "No," I muttered, shaking my head. "This is my first time here." "Really?" he asked. He pulled a pen from his pocket and pointed at the book. Look at how many times you've signed. John Miller, John Miller, John Miller." My knees trembled. "That's not me. That's not me." The receptionist laid his hand gently against the door of room 6. "Open it," he whispered. "You'll see who you are." "No," I said, backing away. "Then I'll show you." The key in the lock turned on its own. The door creaked open. A wave of icy air poured out, sinking into my bones. Inside, it wasn't darkness. It was light, blinding white, sharp and merciless. And in that light sat a man on the bed, his face buried in his hands. When he lifted his head, I saw myself. Exhausted, eyes wide and wild, a smile twisting lips that were not mine. "Welcome back," he said. The room erupted with whispers, dozens of voices at once. "John Miller, John Miller, John Miller." The air inside room 6 was different, heavy, sharp, as if I had stepped underground, into a place that had never once been aired out. Every step I took squeaked against the floor, even though it was covered in carpet. The man, my double, sat on the bed and smiled, not kindly, tired, eyes filled with despair. "Took you long enough," he said. "I thought you wouldn't come." Who are you?" I hissed, though I already knew the answer. "I am you," he said simply. "The one who stayed here when you left." the one who always stays. "I've never been here before," I protested. "This is my first time." He turned his head aside and laughed, a hollow, empty laugh. "They all say that. Everyone insists it's their first time, and then they look at the guest book and see their name written 100 times. Yours is there more than any other. John Miller, John Miller, John Miller." "I'm not John Miller," I shouted. He leaned closer, his eyes darkened. "No? Then why do we call you that here?" The room shook, the walls cracked, black water began to seep from the seams in the wood. Voices rose, at first faint, then louder, until they roared in my head. "John Miller, John Miller, John Miller." I clamped my hands over my ears, but the voices would not stop. I lifted my gaze, and the walls were no longer blank. Words appeared, carved into the wood, letters bleeding down like fresh wounds. "Do not open, do not look, do not close." The very rules the clerk had given me, only now they were etched in blood. "Why?" I whispered. The double stood. He was my height, my frame, but his movements were jerky, like a puppet on strings. "The rules were meant to protect you," he said, "but you always break them. That's why you're here. That's why you keep coming back. And that's why you'll never leave." "That's not true," I whispered. "I can leave. I'll leave right now." I tried to back away, but the door behind me was gone. Only a bare wall remained. "No," the double said, "you never had a choice. It always ends here, in room 6. The mirror on the wall across from the bed flared to life, but I didn't see just one reflection. I saw dozens of versions of myself, all screaming, all pounding on the glass, all desperate to break free. Some had hollow eyes, some had no faces at all. My knees buckled. "Oh God," I gasped. "There is no God," my double said. "There is only us, and soon you'll be another reflection." He stepped forward. Water streamed from his mouth, his eyes, his hands. Every step left a wet print across the carpet. "Stay back," I shouted. I grabbed the nightstand lamp and hurled it. It shattered against him, but nothing happened. The water on the floor swallowed the shards instantly, as if they had never existed. "You can't fight," he said. "You can't run. Because in this room, it doesn't matter who enters, only who remains." The whispers closed in around me, from the walls, from the ceiling, from beneath the floorboards. "Stay. Stay. Stay." The double reached out. His fingers melted into shadow, curling around my wrist. The cold was unbearable. It pierced straight through the bone. "Say it," he commanded. "Say who you are." I gasped, trying to pull away. "Say it!" His voice thundered. The walls shook with it. The whispers rose into screams. "John Miller! John Miller! John Miller!" The room went black. The light died. And the only thing I felt were his shadowy fingers dragging me into himself. The walls shook. My double's fingers tightened around my wrist, pulling me closer. I could feel myself slipping into his cold mass, ready to vanish inside him, when suddenly the mirror cracked. The glass rippled, as if someone from within was pounding so violently that it split. For an instant, the darkness in the room gave way to a blinding flash of light. I seized the chance. I tore myself free and ran toward the wall where the door had been. And there it was, back again, as if fate had given me one last chance. Without thinking, I wrenched it open and stumbled into the hallway. But the hallway was no longer the same. It stretched on endlessly, its walls bending and breaking in impossible angles. The lights above flickered in erratic rhythms. Each step I took echoed like a hollow drumbeat, as if I were walking underground. "I have to get out," I panted. "I have to get out of here." I ran forward. Doors lined the corridor on both sides, but they were all the same. No numbers, no handles, just smooth panels mocking me with their stillness. After dozens of steps, I realized something terrible. I was walking the same stretch of hallway again and again. The same damp carpet, the same smudges on the walls, as if dirty hands had dragged across them. And then, I heard laughter. faint at first, like an echo, then louder, closer. It was my laugh. "No," I whispered. I turned, and there he was. Another me. Not the one from the room, a different version. This one had hollow sockets where his eyes should have been. Black water streamed down his face. He was smiling as he stepped toward me. I spun and ran the other way, but around every corner, another me. Some were crying, some were screaming, some were grinning. But all of them looked hungry. "Why? Why are there so many of me?" I cried, collapsing into myself. The whisper rose from the walls, answering me. "Because you have always been here. Because you never leave. Because the motel is your home." The knocking returned, not just on one door, on all of them. The entire corridor thundered, as if behind every panel someone was waiting, begging to get out. "No, no, no!" I shouted, running faster. And then I saw the reception desk. For a moment I thought it was salvation. But as I drew closer, I realized the guest book was no longer lying on the counter. It was in the clerk's hands. He stood there, calmly writing, again and again, "John Miller, room 6. John Miller, room 6. "Stop!" I screamed, ripping the book from his hands. Pages scattered through the air. They rained down around me, fluttering like dying birds. When they hit the floor, I saw them multiply. Hundreds of pages, thousands, and on every one, my name. John Miller, over and over. "It's already written," the clerk said quietly. "You can't erase it. You can't change who you are." "I'm not John Miller!" I roared, my voice cracked with desperation. The clerk smiled. "But all your friends call you that, don't they?" My breath caught in my throat. "What?" And then the voices rose from the walls. Familiar voices. Tom, my parents, my ex-girlfriend, even my old professor. They all called out my name, but not my real one. "John! John Miller!" I dropped to my knees, clutching my head. "No, that's not me. That's not me." From the ground, black water gushed upward. It rose past my knees, up to my thighs, threatening to drown me right there in the hallway. Reflections formed on the surface of the water. My faces, my versions, one after another staring back at me. All of them smiling that empty smile. The clerk stood above it all, whispering, "The labyrinth has no exit, only doors, and the doors will always lead you back." I turned. At the end of the corridor, glowing in the darkness, stood the door with the number 6, wide open, waiting. The open door of room 6 glowed with white light. Everything else dissolved into darkness. Water pressed against me, herding me forward as if this was the only way out. "No," I whispered, my heart slamming against my ribs. "I'm not going in there." "Not again." "You must," the receptionist said. His voice was calm, unshakable. "You broke the rules, and rules are not a game." "I'm not John Miller," I screamed. The receptionist smiled faintly. "You've always said that." From the walls and floor, a chorus of voices erupted, louder than a storm. "John Miller, John Miller, John Miller." My legs betrayed me. One step forward, then another. The door pulled me in. Inside, a figure sat on the bed, face buried in his hands. Slowly, he lifted his head. It was me, exhausted, eyes hollow, black water streaming from the empty sockets. "Welcome back," my double whispered. The door slammed shut behind me. The light went out. When I opened my eyes again, I was standing at the reception desk. The guest book lay open before me. A pen in my hand moved on its own, scratching words across the page. "John Miller, room 6. I raised my head. The receptionist stood behind the counter, his face calm, exactly as before. "You may choose any room," he said, his voice once more deep and rasping. "Any room, except number 6. Behind me, a door creaked open. A new figure stepped inside, a stranger, soaked from the rain, eyes heavy with exhaustion. And I smiled, Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the story, please like the video and subscribe to Midnight Jack for more. Until next time.